If you clicked on this video, then you know my deepest, darkest. I have not bought a retro video game since the end of 2023. And I got a couple of reasons why. I've always loved video games since I was really young, and I didn't start seriously collecting until I was probably like my early teens. I always had collections as a kid. I always liked to play everything that came out, and my dad was a big gamer, so he kind of knew like what was cool and always understood that I just loved games, so he would get me a lot. My brother was really into it. So for me to say that I haven't purchased a retro game in over a year is kind of wild.
Blasphemy!
My collection consists of over 1,500 games ranging all the way from the NES to the most modern systems, PS5, Nintendo Switch. I've always been getting games and collecting them. There are three big reasons why I no longer collect retro games, or at least have not focused on them. If you've been collecting a long time like me, you may have noticed a trend in retro game collecting in which games become more expensive as time goes on. Of course, there's inflation and the world's just getting more expensive in general, but with gaming, there has been just a steady incline of price. And sometimes you get like little bursts or little booms of generations of games because the people who played those games when they were younger are now older and have income where they can buy these games. And in the past 5 years, the 6th generation of consoles have become the target of more expensive retro game collecting, which is very unfortunate for me because I am a major collector of the GameCube, of the PlayStation, of the Xbox, although the Xbox is still stays really cheap, but no one wants to collect for that for some reason. There's this little thing called COVID, which caused a ton of people to stay at home due to a lockdown. Obviously, we've all lived through it. If you are existing right now, then you've experienced COVID. And if you're 4 years old watching this, then that's weird. And I don't know how you understand what I'm talking about. I won't bore you with the details of COVID. We all know what happened. You had to stay home. However, how it affected the game industry is a little bit interesting. If you were a collector and are a collector, you'll know that there was a gigantic bubble. It has since calmed down a little bit. I was buying games at that time right before the bubble really blew up, and that resulted in a huge boom in the video game grading market. Now there's WADA, there's a bunch of different video game graders out there nowadays. Grading's not very new. If you're a fan of comics or trading cards, you'll know that there is a process in which you can take some special item of yours and get it put in a nice acrylic case, and they will rank it based on how well it is preserved. I'm not a big fan of grading games. I'm very much in the camp of play the games that you own. I'm not very upset about having Victorious, and this was a gift, so thank you, Edward, for the gift. This is just a fun thing to parade around. With the rise of graded games, there also came a ton of auctions in which a couple video games sold for astronomical prices, which put in a bunch of ridiculously, stupidly rich people's heads that they could start collecting and grading video games and selling them for a high price, in which a ton of people went out and started buying all games thinking they could get money for whatever was graded. And I'm also not qualified or smart enough to talk about this bubble more than this quick explanation that I can give you. There's a ton better YouTubers out there who can explain it better. My first reason why I haven't been collecting retro games as much is money. Video games have become so overpriced. So overpriced. As someone who always strived for the deal, generally when I went to collect retro games, I tried really hard to spend no more than $60, which even then could be pretty high depending on the game. And of course, there were always games that were really expensive and that were worth way more because it had a low print or, any reason you were collecting a game. However, during this boom, it was just, there was no reason to buy anything because it was so overpriced. No game was worth what people were asking for. And for me, being a huge collector of PlayStation 2, of GameCube, it was also during the time in which that generation became very popular because people my age who grew up playing those games want to buy them and wanted to get Mario Parties and Mario Karts and all these classic multiplayer games because everyone was stuck at home. I don't make a ton of money anyways because I'm a full-time content creator. Subscribe. My income in general has certainly affected how I look at games and what I want to purchase them for. But I did, during that time, it was 2021 specifically, I started collecting a ton of games because I saw the bubble coming. I could tell there was games getting way crazy expensive because I used to look every day. I used to go on eBay. I used to have a lot of groups online that I would see and people would sell them, again, games for really cheap. GameCube, PlayStation. It was kind of wild what they were selling for. Because all these started seeing games as a form of profit, the whole industry got hit really hard. The retro game market has just gotten so crazy expensive. I've just had no interest, and it makes me sad. Reason number 2, and this one might hurt some of you purists out there, because I, for a long time, was a console purist. I have been emulating. Now, I do have to say, I do still plan on playing all my games in my collection. I do still play them as much as I can. A lot of games I don't, because I already beat them and they either suck or there's no reason to play them again. But the reason why I'm emulating more so than playing on actual hardware is retro achievements. I am an achievement freak, and I actually plan on doing a video talking about my history with achievements, because good lord, I'm addicted. Retro Achievements has provided multiple reasons for me to emulate. Number 1 being a huge reason for me to replay some of my old favorite games. I am a full-time streamer, so a lot of my content is kind of all over the place. I'm a variety streamer, so I play everything. But I always have a hard time playing stuff I've already played and make it interesting, because if I know what's going to happen story-wise, I'm like, you know, not as interested. If I'm good with the gameplay, I don't know how fun that is to watch for certain games if I'm like, you know, a master at it. So with the retro achievements, it adds an extra layer of challenge, but also a nice incentive for me to go through the game again, and for my viewers to be like, hey, he's finally playing this game again. So that's really helpful from a streamer perspective. On top of that, emulating, there's a ton of different things you can do to make the experience better. Notably, I've been doing a lot of PS2 emulation, and you can increase the overall just visual fidelity. So games that in my memory look really good, when you play them on you know, a CRT and on the actual game, not as good. When you emulate them, you can do crazy things to make them look legit like a modern game. Retro achievements are huge. The ease of access as a streamer is incredible. And just the overall features. There are some games out there that I'll admit I use save states for. I think there are some games that are stupidly unfair, or that playing them on actual hardware is such a miserable experience. You can fast forward, you can rewind, you can save states, and these things just make games more enjoyable. And I'm much more of a game completer than I am like a purist. Now, there are games that I will totally sit and play as intended and suffer, because that's just, you know, that's just how I want to enjoy the game. But there are games that I want to finish that I don't want to spend, you know, 40 hours grinding, which I can cut in more than half because you can double the speeds. Emulation provides me with a ton of cool ways to experience these games that I've been playing in new ways, but also like translated games or Japan exclusive or Europe exclusive games. There's just so much out there that I don't have to spend as much time focusing on my retro stuff when there is a huge library out there for me to try. And my third and final reason, at least for this video, is I'm actually kind of satisfied with my collection. When I look at my game collection, seeing that number, over 1,500 games, that just makes me feel like I did it. I achieved a collection that I've always wanted to achieve, where it's kind of like a library feel, you know, like people would come in and borrow my games, or if I have a bunch of friends over, we could play pretty much everything.
What is a friend?
Also, I did come to the realization a couple years ago that I don't know if I'll be able to play everything I own. So if I kept collecting and I kept buying more and more games, it would pretty much guarantee that I would never finish them. I'm literally sitting on hundreds of games that will take me years and years to finish, because they're RPGs, because they're big games, because they're just old games that might take me weeks to finish because they're so tricky or difficult. I am still buying new games on the regular. I do get provided a lot of indie game codes. I get provided full game codes from like Capcom and other developers out there. So my modern gaming is might even be worse than what I have here with my digital collection, my PC collection. Now, of course, that's not to say that I'm never going to collect retro games again. I am still always keeping my eyes open for cool deals or things that I may have completely missed. As far as collecting goes, games at least, I feel good. I feel happy. Like Forrest Gump said,
I'm pretty tired. Think I'll go home now.
So those are 3 reasons why I haven't bought a retro game in over a year. But I wanted to ask, any collectors out there who are feeling this way? Do you feel satisfied with your collection? Are you big into emulation? I want to discuss more gaming things just in general, because I love gaming. It's still a big part of my life, and I have so many stories with games, and there's so much we can talk about here. I think it's just an interesting thing to put out there that as a huge game collector, I haven't bought a retro game in such a long time, and I don't know, it's kind of fascinating. It's weird to think that last year I legit didn't buy a single retro game. I don't think I've ever done that since, I don't think I've done that since like I was 9. Tell me if you're a collector out there and you had similar feelings, or you think I'm way off base and you're like, dude, play it. You got the CRT, you got the games, you got it all. But until then, if I do buy another retro game, you'll see a follow-up video and be like, hey, I did buy one. But for now, we're just gonna pet my collection goodnight, and good night to you. Don't forget to play your games.